it goes back to, another thing that I learned from Robert Fripp, and a lot of the things that we spend time on the guitar craft courses is, learning how to be, fully in the present moment as much as possible. And there's all sorts of exercises that Robert Fripp gives us to do that within the musical realm, and and in general. But photography is like that too. I think when you're in the present moment, even though the photograph is a record, there was that moment where I made that decision to be in that spot at that time and take that picture, and then we have the record of that event.
Well, I'm here with Paul Richards of California Guitar Trio. He's about to embark on an East Coast tour, including Michigan and Kentucky. And Paul, it's great to see you. I'm so happy that we've had the opportunity to talk today about your photography and the new concert tour coming up. Uh, what can audiences expect from the California Guitar Trio this season?
Well, if I can quote my mentor and instructor, Robert Fripp, Robert says, expectation is a prison. But, but what he means by that is if, of course, if you expect things to be a certain way and it doesn't turn out that way, then you're up for disappointment. But having said that, we've been working on a new CGT album, and we're including a lot of the new material in the show. And we have a bunch of shows that we're doing together with Kaki King. And I'm a big fan of Kaki King's. I've been familiar with her for more than 20 years now. And so it's exciting to be able to do these shows together with her. She's an amazing guitar player and really innovative. And I think it's going to be a fun lineup with CGT and Kaki King. The first show is coming up this Thursday in Kingston, New York. And so we're going to get together then and see what we can work out as far as playing some music together.
Now, you're also playing in Woodstock at the Bearsville Theater, right?
Right. Yes, and that's actually Kingston is where we're staying, but
I see.
Woodstock is the actual concert. That's right. Yeah.
Right. Yeah, they're about 30 minutes apart, I think. So you're going to have new California Guitar Trio songs as well as some new covers you haven't performed before, right?
There is a few new covers we're doing that are new on these recent tours.
And
Yes.
you don't have to reveal them if you don't want to.
Well, we always include some, I won't say the name of the tune, but we always like to take some of these classic rock covers and turn them into CGT, acoustic electric versions. And so there's something that from when I was a kid, my two oldest brothers, they were both played guitar, and they taught me some of my early guitar riffs. But they also were avid music collectors and brought home lots of amazing albums and of all different, progressive rock and classic rock and this tour we're including something from the Allman Brothers.
Excellent.
Oh, yeah,
Well, that's a challenge in any case.
yeah, yeah.
So even back then, did you foresee yourself as a touring musician traveling the world and playing the music you love and music you're creating yourself?
Well, it was always something that was really exciting to me, even as a, 13-year-old, just learning to play guitar. It was the most exciting thing that in the world, really. And I couldn't get enough of it, but I would, be in school all day and just rush home after school to be able to to pick up my guitar and play. And of course, at that point, I didn't know that I would become a professional musician. But it was a few years later when I was finishing high school and entering into college, and my father was an anesthesiologist, and he was hoping I would follow in his footsteps. So when it came time to make some important decisions on things, and I had actually tried to follow some other career paths, but there was nothing that I could imagine myself doing besides being the musician was the only thing that I could really do that made sense for me and that was of any interest to me. So even though I did try to pursue other things, that being a musician was really the only thing that mattered to me. And so at that point, I really took every choice I could to help make that happen, including finding the best teachers, and which also meant going on the Robert Fripp guitar craft course, which is where I met the guys with the California Guitar Trio, and that was clear back in the late '80s. And then even at that point, we just took every decision that we could to make it happen, and we were so fortunate that we've been able to become professional musicians and are still 34 years later now still out touring, and this year things are really starting to pick up and we're getting quite a few shows.
Excellent. So, how is the current reality of being a traveling musician? How does that compare with your imagination of what it was going to be like when you were younger? Is there any alignment or is it completely different?
Well, that also goes back to the expectation as a prison, because of course, I dreamed of, being a rock star and being, what that, might be like. But, I don't think I ever really expected that because I was always just happy to play music. And that was the main focus for me was the opportunity to play guitar and play music for others is really a gift. And I, I always appreciate that we have achieved a certain amount of success that we can go out and tour. We have an agency that books our shows for us, and people come buy tickets and come to our shows, which is an amazing thing. And I always feel grateful for that. And that as we, continue on into our, 34 plus year career as California Guitar Trio, that it's still possible for us to tour, but it has gotten a lot more expensive in the last few years, and especially now I'm seeing prices on traveling going up quite a lot. So that is a challenge, and we just have to figure that out. I mean, that's just the way it is, and I think it's still, it's not impossible for us, but it just makes things a little bit more difficult and have to try to be careful on the way we spend our, tour money. You don't see us in, fancy tour buses and the private jets and things like that only the most famous musicians can afford. We do most of our tours, but we rent vehicles and stay in moderately priced hotels, things like that make it so we can get out and tour, and it's still reasonable financially for us.
So you also are a photographer and you sell your prints at CGT concerts
Yeah.
and on your own website that I help run and manage the prints and the inventory of your stuff. How do you find time to photograph while you're on tour? There's so many demands on you guys to be at the venue on time and be up and out the door on time and sound
Yeah.
check on time. How do you do it?
Well, there's being a photographer, I feel that one of the major elements is being in the right place at the right time, especially when I'm doing outdoor photography and landscape photography. But so the advantage of touring is that we are traveling all over the place, and it's, fairly inevitable that I'll end up in an amazing, beautiful place. And if I'm lucky, sometimes it'll just land in my lap that I'm arrive in a place that is an amazing place just by en route. I mean, that's I think you're going to talk about this coming up here, but this photo, this is the print that you're going to talk more about later. But this print, so this chimney rock is in the near the Four Corners area in Colorado, and we were traveling. We had done some shows down in New Mexico, and we're traveling up to Colorado area, and we just happened to pass this area while this storm. You can see the storm clouds forming. I was just in the right place at the right time by chance and saw this amazing, beautiful landscape in front of me, and was able to tell, I think I may have even been driving. Anyway, I said, we got stop the car now and find a good spot to capture that photo. So that ended up, we just ended up in the right place at the right time. Sometimes when we're in a special place, I'll get up early in the morning to catch a sunrise, and a lot of my best photos are from sunrises in different locations, and that's when I'm making more of a effort to get out and find the right spot to capture the sunrise, and that can be a tricky thing. Sometimes I'll look up on Google Maps to find a spot where I can see that that it might be an area that would work well. Sometimes I see what other photographers may have done, and sometimes I can just do a little bit of driving around and searching to find just the right spot for the sunrise or sunset photos.
Well, and I bet you have to be very judicious about when you say we got to pull the car over for a photograph, because that takes time and not everybody always wants to stop, right?
Yeah, but they're usually okay if I'm really insistent about something. I mean, they're good guys, so they
Of
don't
course.
don't mind too much. Although I did remember back when Hideo was with us, I insisted on making a stop at the White Sands National Park in New Mexico,
Oh yeah.
and it's an amazing place, but it's really hot and
Oh,
windy and sandy and dusty, and we all got out of the car and I was all excited with my camera taking photos, but I looked over to Hideo, who wasn't straying too far from the car, and he was like, why we stop in this hot sandy place.
oh no. I
So he
remember going on
wasn't
hikes with
so
you guys too, and it was always a challenge to get all of you to come out and do some stuff in Colorado, so I can
yeah,
understand that. Oh, but
yeah,
yeah, that's a challenge, and I can see why you'd want to get up early and go for a walk, and then you can
yeah,
kind of be in your own headspace as you're making your
yeah,
photographs.
yeah.
And I've got to say, I've seen a lot of your pieces and printed a lot of your pieces, and this has got to be one of the most Ansel Adams like
Yes,
perfect,
yeah, yeah.
absolutely perfect
And
landscape that I've had the pleasure of printing.
lends itself so well to the photogravure style of printing. I mean, you can really see the detail in the landscape and the clouds, and just this is a perfect print. And you've done an amazing job with
Thank you.
printing. And
It's this nice heavyweight paper that makes a difference, compared to like a more flimsy piece of inkjet paper, inkjet looks beautiful and amazing too, but there's something traditional and iconic about a real
Yeah,
intaglio print made on an intaglio press under high pressure. And so
beautiful. Yeah, yeah,
your
it's
work is
incredible.
really, really shining for this process and stands on its own too. We've got these photogravures uh, on sale. There's no limit to them. We didn't limit the edition, but we've also got these silver metallic prints on an inkjet media.
Yeah,
And the
and
effect is
and
really nice in
that
lighting.
that print, I've been carrying some of those on the road with me, and that's been one of the most popular selling items at our shows.
Has it?
Yes.
Excellent. Yeah, I know we released this one and also another landscape, this smaller piece uh,
Yeah.
that's
Yeah.
color. And
And yeah, that one is from Sedona area, and that one is a good example of finding a good spot early in the morning. And we had we were doing a show in Cottonwood, Arizona, that's near Sedona, and I got up early before the sun came up and drove toward the Red Rock State Park and just did some driving until I found that spot and just arrived there, in time for the to catch the
well, the
sunrise.
colors in this are just phenomenal. They don't look real, but I saw the original digital image and it hasn't been augmented. This is the way it was pretty
Yeah.
much.
Yep.
So
Yep. Yeah.
congrats on that. That's also for sale at your website, paulrichardsprints.com.
Yep.
So what's your favorite place in the world to photograph if you could go back or go someplace you haven't been before?
Well, Sedona is pretty amazing place, and you've got a couple of my different Sedona area prints that from that area.
Yes.
And just last week I was in Quebec City, and that where you got that's a
Um,
favorite place. You know, uh, um, I think those are definitely two favorite. The southern Utah and North Colorado, that Four Corners area where the one print the Chimney Rock print is. That whole area is really incredible, and New Mexico. Um, so I don't know. There's so many really good ones, and like I said, I think it's just really a matter of being in the right time at the right place and finding the right time and the right place.
well, Sedona is iconic, and I've heard it's kind of an energy center. Uh,
Yeah,
I know a
yeah.
number of photographers that return to that place to try and continue to get like the essence of it. You're having that kind of escape from the tour and are able to go in there and explore some visual compositions. How does that pair with your musical training and your work on the road? Is it
Well,
just a distraction?
no, I think they go hand in hand very much, and it goes back to another thing that I learned from Robert Fripp, and a lot of the things that we spend time on the guitar craft courses is learning how to be fully in the present moment as much as possible, and there's all sorts of exercises that Robert Fripp gives us to do that within the musical realm and in general, but the photography is like that too. I think when you're in the present moment, even though the photograph is a record, there was that moment where I made that decision to be in that spot at that time and take that picture, and then we have the record of that event. But I think it still is very much in the same way about being aware of where we are in that moment and being aware of our surroundings and being as much as we can in that moment. And I think every photograph has a different story about that special moment that was captured.
Yes. And it is like a spiritual moment between you and your environment versus you and your fellow musicians. When you're playing music, you've got to be present for that too. But it's a living being that you're communing with as opposed to an environment and nature and whatever's
Yeah,
going on where you are at the time.
yeah, yeah. In expanding what we were just saying, there's the photo right behind your head there of that of the yes the in the
New York
fox
City.
hunt, yeah,
Oh,
and
fox hunt. Yes.
yeah, the fox hunt. So that one, and we have talked about that a little bit before, but that one I was just really lucky and fortunate to be able to catch that. And so this was back when I was using the Canon film camera, and
The 1988, what one would
yeah,
call a vintage photograph nowadays.
yeah, that photo when I was in England with working on the Robert Fripp Guitarcraft courses. Robert invited me and one of the other guys, Dean Jensen, to go and stay at his cottage. I was actually there for a while with Dean Jensen and also with Victor McShirley. So Robert had two houses. He had the house, Red Line House, where most of the students were, and then he had his own house, which was called Reddish House, where he and his wife were living together. And on that property, yes, that's the house right there. So that's Reddish House. And at the Reddish House, just to the right of that, that's an old stone house. There, Robert has like I guess it used to be like a servant's cottage, and I was in that house for I don't know at least 3 months time. And while I was there, I got to be good friends with Robert Fripp's gardener, Les Collins, who lived up the street, and he lived in a area of the town called the Marsh, and we named that tune the Marsh after him, uh, dedicated to him after he had passed. But while he was the gardener at Robert's Reddish house, and I think he was the gardener in that same garden for his whole life, his old gardening career, and he was really liked to go follow the fox hunting, and of course, I wasn't so excited about seeing any foxes harmed. And fortunately, on that day, there were no foxes torn to shreds. But it
Good.
was interesting to go see the ritual and tradition of that fox hunt. And so Les brought me and Dean to that field before they set out on hunt. All the riders are in this field, sitting on their horses, and there's people serving drinks on platters, and it's a very official, formal thing, and that was very interesting to see. After a while of this, kind of pre-gathering, they bring all the dogs into the field, and they get the dogs all grouped together, and it was then that Les grabbed me and pulled me over to that spot where I took that photo and said, "Stand right here and get your camera ready." So Les helped me get that shot that is now I think one of my best shots,
I agree.
and it looks like a painting.
It
Um,
truly does. It looks like a Norman Rockwell, and
yeah,
what a gift of
yeah,
Les to like take you right to the spot where he knew things were
yeah,
going to
yeah,
happen because
yes.
he had been there before. And as a new
He knew
photographer,
he knew what was gonna happen. Yeah,
even as a seasoned photographer, you don't necessarily know where to be. So
yeah,
having a local there is probably a lesson to a lot of photographers.
yeah. And you can see the difference in the film photography versus the digital images are bright and crisp and very detailed, and that one just has an ambience to it, which is
Yeah.
uh, different than the others.
Well, and we paid special attention to it, and I know you had somebody come in and clean it up even more.
That's
And
right.
I'm so glad you did that because it was well worth the effort. It's a beautiful print.
Howard Snyder, who he's a we used one of his photos for CGT, the album, and he's one of my mentors, really. He and Tony Levin and Howard Snyder. There's a few. I've got a few friends that are excellent photographers that have really helped me a lot, and those guys are real pros. And anytime I can learn from them, uh, we used Howard's photo for our Como Ribi album.
Oh,
Uh,
yes. Beautiful, beautiful. Love the
yeah,
album, love the photograph. Thank
yeah,
you, Howard, and thank you, Tony. We, of course, sell Tony Levin's prints of Peter Gabriel and King Crimson. So those can be found from the same links that take you to Paul Richards' site.
yeah, yeah. And Tony, I've been, obviously a big fan of Tony for a long time, of course, through his bass playing. But then when he was releasing, I remember when he put out the Tony Levin photo book, and before I had even met him or knew him at all, and how cool I thought that, first photo book was, of all those, old photos he did way clear back in the 70s and 80s, and and then after, meeting him and, becoming, friends with him, and we actually stayed at your house back in the 90s when we were doing some rehearsing and playing the shows at the Boulder Theater.
That's right.
And that was all. We had just met Tony pretty early on. And whenever I could, playing music with him, I learned, musically, but I always enjoy talking photography with him and get some tips on how he does his editing and things like that. And just looking at his photos is super inspiring. And so all the stuff he's got on your website is just incredible.
He is such a creative force and clever setups that he'd do on stage to capture what he captured during the Peter Gabriel years.
Yeah,
And again, like you say, just being present. The man is always present, not just in the studio, but
yeah.
um, it's an honor to work with him, and it's an honor to work with you. And
Well, thank you, and it's an honor to work with you. The prints are amazing, and I think everybody who has purchased one of the prints knows what the quality. And I think that was even the quote from Robert Fripp when he received his print, that he said that he didn't believe that quality of print was attainable. Do you remember the exact quote, John?
yeah, he said, I could not believe that this level of quality was even possible.
Yes, yeah, and he's right. I mean, when you see the prints in person, it's really remarkable. I mean, this is something that I think anybody would enjoy having,
Yes,
on
and the
their
smaller
wall.
ones are, of course, for sale on CGT Tour,
Yeah,
and smaller and bigger ones are available at the website paulrichdsprints.com. I think we're about out of time. Is there anything else before we sign off?
I think we're good. I think
Cool.
that's good. Yeah, thank you,
Well,
John, for
well,
taking
have
the.
a great tour. Real excited to uh, watch you on the internet and see where you guys go. Are there going to be any um, streaming events that we can tune into, those of us who aren't on the
Let's
East Coast?
see. I'm trying to think. We're playing one of the shows just coming up within this next week is we're at the Iridium in New York City. I think that's a week from today. No, a week from tomorrow. And in the past, I remember they did some streaming, and so that one might be available, but I'm not sure. I'll have to do some follow up.
All right, good. Well, we'll be hopeful about that, and yeah, be safe out there on the road, and thank you for all you do.
Thank you, John.